Hey, welcome back to Next Third, Best Third. I'm David Fenwick, your founder and host. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk and answer the question, how do you live your most courageous and impactful story? And with that, Juliana Page, come on.
No pressure.
And you're back. So tell me,
back.
how do you live your most courageous and impactful story?
Well, that's a loaded question,
Come
which
on.
you don't answer in just one answer. There's not just one way to do
We've
it.
got all the time in the world. So.
Yeah. Well, I think on the surface of this, it's starting to identify, where am I a coward?
Wow.
That's how it starts. So you have
That's a tough word for a lot of men, right?
Well, just any human.
Anybody.
Nobody's like, I'm a coward. It's
Right.
not like what we get gold stars for. It's
Yeah.
not how you want to see yourself. But when you're able to see where you're escaping and becoming a really great escape artist, where you're kind of a wimp, you're not a warrior, where you're not showing up courageously or with the fullness of who you are, you're not being an answer, which is why you're on the planet. When you start looking at that, it means that you have to be a powerful person.
Yeah.
It means that you have to stop being a victim, or stop telling some stories, or stop showing up in ways that are limiting. And you have to evaluate all of that. So you have to evaluate, where am I being a coward? Where am I setting limits on myself that don't serve me? Where am I showing up in ways that are hiding and not the fullness of who I'm here to be? Yikes.
Yeah.
And that feels pretty intense. But then you're like, okay, game on.
Right.
Game on. I got work to do. And that work doesn't end, right? Like, we don't arrive in life. And this is not a perfectionistic journey. This is not a high achievement journey. We can't just like high achieve with the emotion or thoughts or different things, or with ourselves even. You don't bully yourself into breakthroughs.
That's good.
Right? So you have to get brutally honest. Brutally in the sense of, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. You're gonna see where you have failed yourself, where you've abandoned yourself, where you've lied to yourself, and then in turn, where that has impacted people around you. And this could even be if you've struggled with addiction and you finally are willing to cry out for help and start admitting that you have a problem and start dealing with it, you start to wake up.
Yeah.
You start to awaken, and you start to see what was in your wake. And then you're like, yikes, now I got work to do,
Yeah.
right? There's some things to heal. There's some other ways that I can show up. And that takes an incredible amount of courage to, one, admit it, to admit that you're not okay, to admit that you've got some problems, to admit that you're powerless to some degree, and that you've been helpless to change your reality, and to start getting help and start being supported. It is so courageous to do that. That's why many people do not.
I love this because, you know, part of the whole thing of Next Third, Best Third, some of the very basic is it takes courage to be vulnerable and to be honest, right? I mean, but that's the most courageous thing you can do.
But if you're not doing that, what are you actually doing?
right?
Like, you're living dishonest and super like tough with a exterior shell that doesn't let anybody in. Okay. Do you want to be happy or miserable? It's up to you.
And I love how you said that we're here on earth to be an answer.
Yes.
You're not here on earth to be a victim. You're not here on earth to just be by yourself and isolated. You're not here on earth just to be going through the motions.
Yeah.
You're here on earth with a purpose and to be an answer.
Yeah. And you're not a burden, and you're not a problem to be solved. Like, you are an answer. And if you just, even as an identity, if you start believing I am an answer, you show up different.
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
think I'm a victim, or I'm a problem, or I'm a burden, you also show up some kind of way. And which one is going to help you change your life?
Yeah.
I don't know, but personally, being a victim and a coward has not served me very well.
No.
It's helped me master self-sabotage, but that's not what I want to get great
I
at.
don't even want to talk about self-sabotage over there, but it's
Yeah.
true. I think everybody who's listening can identify with that sometime in your life you've been a victim.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometime in your life you've self-loathed, right?
Yeah.
You've been down on yourself and believed these lies and lost your way.
Right. And that wasn't your fault, right? A lot of us have experienced some of the worst things ever. Unfortunately, now humans carry so much pain that you would have no idea that they carry. And their stories are so deep, so complex, so painful, so traumatizing, right? We're not unscathed in that way. And I think when you go through something where you literally are victimized, right? That is a moment in your life, but it can become your identity, and that can become your lifestyle. And you learn, and you've been trained to shy away from things or run from things or self-protect, or to control, to try to make sure that that never happens again. But that is not a healthy way to live. And it's going to prevent you from feeling and experiencing and being all that you're called to be.
Right.
It will keep a big, almost prison around you that is invisible.
Right.
And it's going to make it so challenging to show up in life. And it doesn't have to be that hard. It almost creates unnecessary suffering. There's real suffering, but then there's also the unnecessary kind.
Right. Right. Wow. Wow. You had mentioned something, and I don't know if it ties right into it, but you mentioned something to me earlier about that in your work you do a daily 5.
Yes.
How does that apply to all this?
Yeah, well, this was really crazy when I received this. Really, just I call it a divine download as revelation, right? But I was sensing that I was about to go through one of the most intense emotional seasons of my life and have to deal with a lot of shock and a lot of shock waves, a lot of after effects of that. I could feel it. And I literally heard that I'm going to need to show up really different to not limp through life and to not fall back on poor programming, because that would be really easy to do. When life gets hard, we kind of fall back on our defaults, right?
Right.
And so this daily 5 came to me as a way to show up powerfully and develop emotional fitness and resilience and be a really healthy human in the midst of some really tough stuff, which, hello, that's the world we live in now. Right. I just happen to have been training it and conditioning it for a while. But the daily 5 is, what are the 5 things that if you did them daily, they would help you care for you? They would help you know that this is just baseline health. Now, of course, it would be great. I can add to this, but if I can't even do these 5 things, I can't say yes to more. I can't show up in other people's lives because I can't even show up for me. And it's a way that you break people pleasing. It's a way that you break high achievement. It's how you let your yes be yes and your no be no and set some really great boundaries for yourself. And boundaries, there's a lot of talk on boundaries, but boundaries are how you are going to show up no matter what and how people can relate with you. They are not to control or manipulate anybody else. No. This is just how I'm going to show up and what's healthy for me in this season, because other people aren't going to know that. You've got to let them know. So the daily 5, I can go through some of mine. So I have to have quiet time, which I think is hilarious because that would be the last thing that I would ever do. I'm like, be still. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was not it. But I need to have time where I just sit and I am spending time with God. I am seeing what's going on in my heart. I call it doing a soul scan. So if you go through the airport, you know how it scans you for hopefully objects you're not carrying. You scan your soul. So you start thinking about what you've been thinking about. You start seeing, is my heart heavy? What's on my heart? Where have I been living at? What's been my emotional home? Because that's going to show me where I'm at. Where am I not operating in courage? Where am I not operating in faith? So I have that quiet time because that informs then how I pray, how I study the word, how I connect with God. Quiet time. And you can do anything in that quiet time. You can journal, you can worship, you can praise, you can do some personal development, you can read a devotional, something of that kind. So quiet time. Then I always move my body in some kind of way every day. It just is so good. Especially I do so much mental, emotional, spiritual, internal work that you can shift all that just by moving your body. So it's a great way to keep energy flowing and shift energy. So moving your body in some sort of way. And I was a trained athlete, so I just love the idea now where it doesn't have to be training, but it's healthy. It's just good to walk and to move your body, get some sun, get some great oxygen. It's great. So that's 2. Eating as close to the source as possible. So I eat for fuel. Okay, so I don't make this complicated. It's not this diet, that diet, this thing. I'm I can't follow any of that. It just is not fun for me.
Most time diets don't really work.
Right. I just pay attention. I'm does this make me want to go take a nap, or is this going to give me the energy I need for the next few hours, right? If it's going to make me go take a nap, that ain't going to work in my life. So I'm a green juice person, or eating foods literally that give me energy. So just start exploring what does that to you versus things that are there's no nutritional value and that your body can't burn over time and keep you energized. And also hydration is huge with that one. So I was not great at drinking water, but that will keep the fog away in your brain. It'll keep you very clear. It'll help your organs function. There's just so much about flushing your system. So that's 3. I also focus on acts of service. So a lot of the work that I do is service, but what are random acts of service that I can do every day? So if somebody drops on my heart, do I reach out to them? Do I send an encouraging word? Can I be fully present if I'm running an errand or something? Like
That's
I
good.
get to do this errand. Can I smile at somebody at the store, like strike up a conversation with them, or am I like too busy for that and in a
What a
hurry?
different approach. I
Totally
get to
different.
be here.
I get to be
I'm
here.
on assignment.
Yeah.
Looking around for somebody to speak into, somebody
Yeah.
to encourage, someone just to
Yes.
smile at.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. And then number 5 is appreciation. So we've talked about how easy, like you can just be a normal human walking the planet, and it's so easy to get inundated with negative.
Right.
So there's got to be a counterattack to that. And so mine is appreciation. So you hear gratitude all the time, but I'm like, it doesn't hit the same way for me.
Right.
But I think about appreciation because what you appreciate appreciates. So a lot of times we think about things, but we don't express them. We don't communicate them. So even if I appreciate something about a human, do I say it and acknowledge and appreciate that? Or in my life, there's so much to appreciate. Like I think like you are literally living in answered prayers right now, and how quick we are to forget that.
Yeah.
So can you appreciate that you've got this beautiful home, or that you have these great relationships in your life, or that you're doing work that you love, right? Like that's something you prayed for. Like, can we literally sit in that and appreciate it? And it keeps you in this focus, because where focus goes, your energy always flows, right? And what you appreciate appreciates. It gets bigger. So I look at it like, what do I want to make bigger in my life? So an example of this, people are like, oh my gosh, you must be so busy. I'm like, I don't subscribe to that.
Right.
My life is full, but
Right.
it's full of all of the things that I want in my life.
That you
And
wanna
it's
do,
so
right.
fulfilling. So I'm not busy. Like I have like a full, vibrant life, and that keeps me healthy, happy, fulfilled, and it keeps me wanting to show up every day. So that appreciation work will do wonders in your life too. So daily 5, those things, if I can't do that, if I am slipping on quiet time, I can't say yes to more stuff on my calendar, or I need to pull back on the work that I'm doing. And what I do is I pull all of these dailies into my calendar.
Okay.
So I set them as practical. I'm a practical girl. So I'll set them as my just blocks on a calendar. They're super important. So quiet time, nobody gets in that window. That's just as important as any other meeting that I have. You don't
Yes.
need to know what I'm doing. That's my time.
Right.
Right? Workouts are on there. Right? Meetings with friends, or like ways that you fill up your cup, or acts of service. Like they are literally calendar blocks
Wow.
that I have on there. And if I have to shift them around, you can move things on your calendar and get flexible. But you can start to see very quickly, like this is what I need to stay healthy. And if I can't do this, this is where I need to pull back and throw up some boundaries or reprioritize some
It's
things.
so good. I am not a calendar person, so
Yeah.
I'm just the opposite of you. But as you're going through this, these are things that I've been living with, right? I mean, my quiet time is very important to me, right?
Yeah.
In the morning, I'm eating clean. I do that.
Yeah.
I work out. But the appreciation part, the other day I was speaking, shared at church, and it was about gratitude.
Oh, so good.
And so gratitude, I said, wasn't like just going and checking off, counting your blessings.
Right.
I'm happy for this. Thank you for this. Thank you
Right.
for this. But it actually, if you live in gratitude,
Yeah.
if gratitude is the attitude of gratitude that
Yeah.
you bring with you, it becomes a weapon.
100%.
100% a weapon, right?
Yeah.
You can overcome depression, you can overcome self-loathing, you can overcome fear,
Yes.
because you're walking out of this, you're living in this gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I loved how you said appreciation appreciates.
It does.
That's so good.
It does. Or when you think about, we love identity. I do too. I think there's been onslaught against our identity and who we're on the planet to be. I think there's been so many things that are against us showing up fully. But when you think about who you are, right? And if you are a leader that believes in modeling the way, you can't afford to not do this work.
Yeah.
And every day you need to be able to see things differently. You need to be able to be humble. So you need to be able to choose excellence. And for me personally, I'm like, I don't know how to do that apart from God.
Yeah.
I've tried that life and it just never worked for me.
Yeah. I
It
know.
gave me my self-sabotage cocktail, but it didn't help me be great.
Not obviously not all our subscribers and followers,
Yeah.
adhere to our faith, but that's all good. But the thing about it that I found too, it's the same thing is when my identity gets caught up in what I do or what people have done to me or, what
Yeah.
I'm going through, it always just gets all screwed up. My life just gets off kilter. But when I'm resting in who I am, who
Yeah.
I was created to be, right?
Yeah.
That's who I really am. That's my identity.
Yeah.
And if I can stay there, all these things, the shame, the guilt, the disappointment, the fear, that comes and I realize those aren't me.
Yeah.
right? You talk about, you're not your thoughts. Remember, you said that,
Yes.
you're not
Oh,
what
yeah.
you think.
You're
You're
not.
not what you feel, but you're not these things coming at you, I'm not a fearful person. I'm not disillusioned. I'm not depressed. That's
Yes.
not me at all. Those are things that are actually, I say it's warring against my identity.
Yeah. It's so good. We wrestle. I know. I felt like I was plagued by these questions, and I had, maybe people would call it a quarter life crisis, right? But when you have so much that you have to figure out and that you're responsible so early, you don't exist. You literally exist through codependency or people pleasing or so many things, and you
Yeah.
don't know where you are. So I constantly had these questions following me, like, who am I? Why am I here? How do I make a difference? I literally could not answer them. And I thought I was crazy, but the more that I've done this work, I've been coaching since 2008. So the more that
Wow.
I've done this work, I see that everybody wrestles with those questions.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to understand my identity until I came to know the Lord, right? Because when you look at who am I, what is that? Who am I affects what I do and how I do it.
Right.
Okay, so if who I am is I am useful, okay, I am a people pleaser, I am what's another great thing? A high achiever, okay? That's who I am. If that's who you believe you are, what are you going to do now? You are going to overcompensate. You are going to overthink. You are going to try to say yes to every single person. You are going to flood your calendar with making people happy all the time. And then how are you going to do it? With a heck of a lot of anxiety, stress, overwhelm,
Yeah.
and frustration. And that is an operating system now. And there's your rest of your life. And you are going to just produce this, right? But if you can't identify who you are, and if you can't put new words in there, right, that become true for you, then that won't change what you do and how you do it. You'll
Yeah.
keep living through patterns. And we
Right.
really do. We live through patterns.
This morning in my devotion, Oswald Chambers said, if you're trying to be useful,
Yeah.
right? He says, we're not here on earth to be useful.
Yep.
He says, you're really no use to God. He says, but you're valued, highly valued by
Yeah.
God. That's such a different way of viewing your life.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be useful
Yeah.
because what can I do for God? That's not who I am.
Yeah.
But I'm valued.
Yeah.
And each one is highly valued.
Totally. But even that. So if you put, I am valuable, right? I am love. Like I'm literally love in action. I
Yeah.
am an answer, right? If that's now who you are, it's going to affect what you do.
Yeah.
You're going to be an initiator. You're
Right.
going to be intentional. You're going to pray. You're going to do work. You're going to ask for help. And then how are you going to do it? With love, with
Right.
compassion.
And it's
Right?
also going to affect the way you see other people.
Totally.
Right? Because if you're coming from, this is a high achiever,
Yeah.
all this kind of thing, all of a sudden you're going to look at people as either an accomplishment
Yep.
or a burden.
Yep.
You're not going to see them for who they are.
Yep.
But if you're coming through that lens of I'm valuable, I'm loved,
Yes.
I'm an answer.
Yeah.
You're looking at people and you're seeing them in who they really are.
Right.
Possibly in their brokenness.
Yeah.
But you're always going to see their value.
Yeah. But that's work, right? Like
Yeah.
we're trained to do, we're not trained to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are working on identity, you have to believe it.
Yeah.
So that's when people just try to do affirmations like, all day in front of the mirror. It does nothing for you, actually, if you don't believe it. Like it's actually got to get into your heart and you've got to own that. And so that's such a renewing work that's happening inside of you, because when you believe you're valuable, you protect yourself in a different way. You don't self-protect, but you carry yourself differently. You don't tolerate the same kind of things. You don't show up the same kind of way. You care for yourself differently when you believe you're valuable. When
That's
you
true.
don't, you don't care for yourself, and you tolerate all sorts of things that you
Wow.
don't deserve. And so if you don't believe it, you really get in big trouble. So this is far deeper than just like, I'm an answer. You can't just
Right.
like sling that and
No,
believe
no,
it
no, no.
immediately. There's definitely a learning curve there.
That's so good though.
So we teach, for example, I really think this has to do with this, but our version of success is usually warped. And sometimes, maybe if we're blessed to go this path, we learn that quick, right? We get everything we want, and then we realize it wasn't enough, and we
Right.
realize it wasn't success the way we thought it was. That was true in my story, but I define it and we teach it. We certify people in this. We certify coaches, spirit-driven success. So what you do is you rate, instead of, if you picture like a wheel of life, you've got all these different life areas. So it could be career, it could be hobbies, it could be fun and enjoyment, it could be health, it could be so many different things. And at the center, usually it's you. I'm at the center, and then on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I'm like totally jazzed about this area, and 0 being like, I'd rather not talk about it.
Yeah.
This is how happy I am.
Yeah.
But that is a setup for failure, right? The pursuit of happiness is actually you being miserable
That's right.
and becoming more aware of that gradually, right? So that's a setup for failure. And so I started to realize this back when I've been certified and gone through different things. I'm like, this doesn't work. Like, this is like a faulty system here. And so if you put God at the center, okay, or an authority in your life, we all need an authority. We're actually designed to depend on someone.
Right.
And I don't want to depend on anybody other than the creator personally.
I'm with you.
It doesn't work out. But if you put God at the center, let's say, then you still have these different life areas, but you see them through a different lens. So this could be a divine assignment. These could be divine health, right? Like, this is a vessel I've been entrusted with, so I'm going to take care of it differently. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is how surrendered are you?
Surrender's such a big thing.
Right? And 0 is like, I haven't even prayed about it, talked about it. I have no attention flowing here.
Right.
So your success is how well you are really partnering and co-laboring in your life.
Yeah. But I think the key, I love that you brought up surrender because the opposite of surrender is performance, right? It really is, right? And even though we're both believers, like, I hate religion, you know, because religion is all about performance.
Yeah.
I'm performing to please a God that is, you know, maybe I created in my own image, or I'm, you know, create a God that I can't approach. I don't have a personal relationship with, or it's to perform to get approval from people in our place of worship and things like that. But surrender, that is it goes back to courageous. Surrender is it's such a courageous thing to really surrender.
Yeah. Well, I did not come from a legacy of faith, right? I didn't come from anybody that believed in God. So this is definitely not how I have a relationship with God, but I have a relationship with God. And I think that that's such a gift, and everything flows from that for me. And that was something I didn't even know was possible.
Yeah.
Could I have that? Could I hear from God? Could I be led by God? If I do, how does that change my life? But I think what's beautiful about it is through relationship like that, you learn that you're not a mistake. You learn that you're well loved. You learn that you are literally an answer. Like, you are formed, shaped, and anointed for such a time as this to be on the planet, to be an answer for what the world needs right now.
That's right.
And to literally carry light. And for me personally, I needed to know that that's not mine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need actually God's courage. I need God's strength. I need God's empowerment. I need God's grace and enablement in my life. I know who I am as a human.
Right.
I know where I fall short. I know where I get tired.
Yeah.
I know where I get overwhelmed.
In your own, you can't muster it up. There's just no way. Yeah.
No. And then I don't have faith in that.
Right.
Right? Because it's like, you don't want to have too much confidence in self, right? And you don't want to be self-reliant. That's actually not a great thing. But to me, it was everything for majority of my life, and it made me miserable, actually. It made me a high achiever in so many things, and that didn't set me up for what I'm here for. So living a purpose-driven life is very, very different. And when you are fueled by grace, when you're fueled by something that is above your thoughts, that's above your emotions, that's above the circumstances that you're experiencing, that gives you hope.
Yeah.
And that gives you vision. That gives you supernatural to your natural. So for example, if the natural runs out, the supernatural can kick in.
Right.
That's great. You're not down to nothing. God's up to something. And that's helpful when life is really terrible.
Yeah. It's interesting. In a lot of my work, work with men who they find themselves in this place where they're being driven, right?
Yeah.
They're being driven either by their own desires, they're being driven by their responsibilities, they're being driven. And I tell them all the time, I said, there's such a difference when you go from being driven to being led.
Oh, yeah.
And this is what you're talking about with God, you know, as that's my life, is I feel like I'm being led, and there's such a peace there, right?
Yeah.
Being driven is a slave mentality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, driving the animal, right? Driving.
Well, it's fear.
It's
right?
fear-based.
And it's also a slave driver.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's a hard way to live, and it's a miserable way to live. And until you can recognize that there could be another option, there could be another way, that is your way.
Yeah.
And so for most people, it takes, a big break to awaken that there's another way. It doesn't have to take that, but it can.
Right. And when you get this breakthrough in your life, wherever it comes, and as you continue to get breakthrough, you dropped a word few minutes ago, legacy.
Yeah.
Legacy is so dear to me. I'm writing a book on legacy, and legacy is not what you leave behind. It's who you leave behind.
And it's who you are. It's what you are planting into other people.
That's right.
What you are
That's what I
sowing
mean
into
by
those
that.
around you.
Who you're leaving behind because of everything
Yeah.
you've poured into them.
Yeah.
We all leave a legacy. This is the
Yeah.
crazy thing. What is the legacy? What
Yeah.
are you planting into people? Are you planting into your sphere of influence? Are you planting in fear, shame, guilt, avoidance, complacency?
Yeah.
Or are you planting in love and hope and
Yeah.
purpose and
Yeah.
faith?
Yeah. I think when we get self-centered, right, we live for self and we don't fully show people who we are. And then we get upset that we have a shallow life and that people don't know us, but we're not showing someone that they can know, right? And so when you think about legacy, you have to start looking at, am I giving people me? Am I giving
Right.
people what isn't going to be here forever? Am I giving people something that's going to serve them and add value, right? Am I showing up in a way that's touching their life? And you probably can answer no to a lot of that when you start evaluating, but then you can start exploring, how do I do that?
Right.
So I read this book. Oh my goodness. This was back during that existential crisis time, right? Which I think we all go through all the time. You're always evolving into different versions
Sure.
of yourself. But I read this book and it was all about who's going to cry when you die.
Wow.
And even in undergraduate school, I had a journalism class and we had to write our own obituary. Okay. So like this existential crisis was next level. But writing your own obituary, right? Writing what you want people to say about you. And, you're not even really at an age where you would be thinking about that in any sort of way, but having yourself do that is so eye-opening.
Yeah.
And then you start to really see in a tangible way, how am I showing up and what really matters? Like I can work all day, but people aren't going to remember that. I can create the best resume and collect all of the accolades, but that's not going to necessarily be what people remember. Maya Angelou says, right? People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. They will
So good.
never forget that. And so I know that by personal experience. Like there's nothing worse than having somebody alive in your life, let's say a parent, but they don't know you and they don't want to. There's no deeper pain than that, right? Like that's a different level of grief. Like they're alive, they could have a relationship with you and they don't.
Right.
But the same is true for you, like abandoning yourself and then not showing up and not sowing into the lives of other people. You feel fulfilled when you give the very thing that you want. So it's almost like a garden hose, right?
Yeah.
If whatever it is flowing through there, let's say you want to experience love. Okay, well, love is the water flowing through the hose. You've got to let it start flowing through you. And then when it flows through you, you get wet. You experience the love. So that's why it's greater to give than to receive. If you can just activate it in yourself and give it, there's all these multitude of ways that it comes back to you. Not always in the place where you sow it and you give it, but it always gets multiplied back to you. So if you just make that your aim, right, to just show up and to sow these seeds of what is valuable to you, what is true to you, that's very practical.
Yeah.
And that's very real. And then suddenly you have this legacy of all these people that are being touched and impacted by you.
So good, because we talk about intentionality and intentionality with relationships. If your next third's going to be your best third, no matter where you are in your life, if your next third's going to be your best third, you have to be investing, right, in who you are and into other people. And so often I see the spheres of influence shrink and shrink and shrink, right? And so what I want to see is people's spheres go bigger and bigger and bigger. I asked this question, I said, and it's, you kind of asked it too, but the way I said is, if you were to leave this earth, right?
Yep.
Would anybody really miss you?
Yeah.
What would your sphere of it, would your neighborhood care? Would they be affected if you were to leave?
Yeah.
Right? Would your workplace really be affected? I mean, really be affected. They'll replace you for a job.
For sure.
But real legacy is exactly what you said. It's how people remember you.
Yes.
And my challenge so often with guys, I shared this a couple episodes ago, but I had a friend of mine, we were talking, and I said to him, I go, how many friends do you really have? Guys that, not friends, but how many men are you involved with?
Yeah.
Again, we're talking men's here. So
yeah.
And I said, not just like your brother, and but I'm outside of your family and that kind of thing. Men who you interact with on a real way. And he said, I don't know. And he started counting them, and he had like a handful. And I was like, oh man, there's so much more for you, right?
Yeah.
And so a little later, I went home and I was thinking, I go, how many do I have? And I'm not saying this to brag, but it was like I couldn't count them all. I mean, there's like hundreds, and I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always the way.
Yeah.
Right? That has been really over just the last few years.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
Amazing. It's exciting, right? Like going off of, if you're an answer, you also have to believe I'm the answer that I seek, right? And then there's someone, something, right? An authority in your life that helps you to be that answer. But what it really means is you then start knowing who you are and you start sowing who you are and what only you can uniquely give to the world, and knowing there's no mistake in that. Like there's literally something that you carry that you are presented to people to give, right? And when you give it, that's the greatest gift you can do with your life. Like you're literally treasure walking the earth, right? There's so much hidden treasure in you, and that you're just designed to give it everywhere you go. And that's really a great key and a great secret to life. And then when you make that your mission, there's no boring day.
That's right.
Every day is an adventure. It gets really fun and exciting, and it energizes you. And it helps you buffer storms and withstand different things and adversities that come against you too, because you're going to find a way to overcome.
So there's people who say, well, I don't feel like I have much to give, or I don't know who I'm going to give it to. There's a proverb says that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. In the world, we think what you'll invest in what you love, right? I'll invest in who I love, I'll invest in what I love. But that's not what that means. It says you'll love what you invest in. So what your treasure, yourself, if you're saying I'm a treasure, if you really look at yourself as a treasure, body, soul, and spirit, everything that you are, where your treasure is invested, your heart will follow. And that's how you have this capacity to love so many people.
It's true. Well, when you love yourself, you invest in yourself. Right. And then through that investment is where you discover what is worthy of investing in and how to do that well, right? Because as a human, you are a limited vessel, right? But you'll start to see, okay, this is where what I have to give is really needed and can be absorbed and received well. This is where it's not, but this is where it is. And I'm going to shake off the dust from the places that it's not well received, and I'm going to sow in all the places where it is, and get really good at doing that because our time is short.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And that's a tough lesson to learn, but it's a real lesson to learn. So many times you can be just bullheaded. I'm going to get this person to respond. Sometimes you just have to just shake them off and move on, right?
Well, it's how can I really value people? So, you've got hands, feet, a heart, a mind, words, right? You can encourage, you can build up, you can think kind thoughts towards a person, you can hug them, right? You can spend time with them, you can literally give them the gift of your presence, right? And let them be seen, heard, known, valued in a moment. There's so much that you can do, and it costs $0 to do this. It will require you being resourceful, but when you start to make that part of your lifestyle, it feeds you just as much as it feeds everybody else.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So again, your daily 5, just go over them real quick again.
So my personal daily 5, the daily 5 are, you come up with this list, but the 5 things that you will do daily to be a healthy human, a high functioning human. Okay. Not just like sliding through the day, but like a high functioning human. Mine are quiet time. Okay. Personal development time, however you identify with that. Moving your body in some sort of way every day.
Motion is lotion.
Yes. Eating close to the source. So eating for fuel, just so that you're actually giving yourself what you need to show up well. Right. And that could go so many ways too, resting and so many other things. Acts of service. So I'm intentionally thinking outside of my box, right? When you get busy about God's business, he has a way to take care of yours. So I think of how can I just get out of my own life and be of service today? And then also appreciate. What can I appreciate so that I can make it grow and get bigger?
That's so good. This is so fun.
I agree.
You're going to have to keep doing this. You're going to have to become a regular guest. So again, we're going to give you all the information how to contact Juliana. She's a tremendous coach. She has a great podcast a couple times a week. What's the name of it?
It's called God's Vibes.
God's Vibes. And it's on YouTube and
Yeah, it's
Spotify.
anywhere you got
everywhere.
podcasts. And then we've got a community called Courage Co, where you
Courage
can
Co.
come and live your most courageous and impactful story and learn how to do that.
You guys got to follow Juliana and get involved, right? So,
Yeah.
and you coach men, women,
Everybody.
Excellent. All right. Again, thanks so much. If you do me a favor, if you'd subscribe, if you'd like, share this, tell everybody about Juliana Page and Next Third Best Third, and we'll see you next time.